Hello everybody, I am Jared Ross, the GeneaVlogger, and welcome back to another Professional Genealogist Reacts. In today's video, I will be doing a reaction to I Found My Biological Father with an Ancestry DNA Test by Ryan John. I'm really excited for this video. I haven't done a lot of reactions to adoption stories, so hopefully there's a lot of information in terms of matching on this. Although I don't think this story is going to focus as much on like the DNA test results like a lot of videos I've watched. It's going to focus more on the actual adoption story. I'm really excited about this, especially too, because I volunteer as a search angel, which means that I help people who are adopted or don't know, their parentage for whatever reason. And I help them with DNA tests to figure out who their family is and figure out who their parents are. So this is going to be a really fun one. Hopefully I'll do a whole bunch of adoption story type of things too. So if you have any stories you want me to react to, send me those links down in the comments below. Also, before we jump into the video, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help me out. And click that subscribe button and click the bell so that you get notifications on future videos. But with all of that said, let's go ahead and just jump right into the video.
I'm 30 years old, and today I met my biological father for the very first time. Since sharing my adoption story, I knew it was going to be a long journey to find my biological family, but here I am, on the other side of the world, from Australia to London. On Mother's Day last year, I posted this video.
Hey, I'm Ryan, and I've never met my biological mother. I'd love to be able to look my birth mother in the eye and just say how thankful I am for literally everything. She gave me my life, and I feel like the least I can do is let her live hers.
Now, one interesting thing I'm kind of thinking is that the video is titled that he found his biological father, but in this, he's right now talking about his mother. And it's actually kind of a common thing I've found with a lot of adoptees that I work with is that they're often focused more on finding their biological mother. And the whole idea of finding the biological father, while it is a thought, it's often not as big of a thought. So when the father's side of the family is often found, then it can be a little bit more like, oh, wow, a bit more surprising. So I wonder if that's going to be the case here in that, he never really thought about his biological father as much, and then he found him. So, but let's see.
I just wanted to say thank you for everything, and I hope you have a great Mother's Day.
Most people take it for granted, but for me, I've never met anyone with the same blood as me. I've never met anyone that looks like me before, and until posting that video, I didn't even know anyone that had the same views on adoption as me. But since that video, everything's changed. I've got messages from right around the world, from other adoptees just like me, from lots of birth mums sharing their stories. But what's really changed my life was all the encouragement to do an Ancestry DNA test. So I'm 90.
If you are adopted and you are trying to find your biological family, while you can use, your adoption records, your birth records, a lot of records that are known as non-identifying records, which will basically give health information about the family or maybe some other information about the family, but in a non-identifying way. Although sometimes you can actually use that information to figure out who your family is. So yeah, just like he was encouraged to do a DNA test to find his biological family. If you are searching for your biological family, doing a DNA test is going to be one of your best tools to figure that out.
99% European, very European, 62% Irish.
Yeah, that explains the beard.
Yeah?
The red beard. And the blue eyes, probably.
But what's really changed my life now was giving those results to CC Moore. CC Moore is a DNA detective and host of American TV show Finding My Roots. She's the best at getting results and building out family trees to find out who you're related to. And after lots of round-the-world Skype calls, she found my biological father. My birth father doesn't have Facebook and I didn't have an email address, so I decided to write him an old-fashioned letter. But how do you start and how do you write a letter? to a birth father who probably doesn't know you exist? Is it the opposite to Star Wars with a "you are my father," or do you do it a more subtle yet specific, "Oh, hey, what were you doing 9 months?"
That is one of the really tough parts when you do finally find your family, is actually contacting them. It's one of the things that when I help adoptees do this themselves, they often want me to write the letters, and that's something that search angels will try not to do. Is we don't want to be the ones to contact your family right off the bat. We usually are encouraging you to do that. Although that's not always the case, especially with a lot of work like for Finding Your Roots or different shows where they have to have certain sorts of information that's secret for a while. It's really interesting how hard that is, but how simple it really has to be, because you just don't know how people are going to react. And I work cases where we contact the families, and certain messaging systems, you can see when people have read the message, and we'll see messages read and no one will contact back, and you can follow up, but sometimes people will find their biological families, and the biological family has zero interest in connecting at all. It's unfortunate, it happens, but yeah, writing that letter and just trying to do it in a way to avoid that is really hard to do.
Before June 28, 1987. It took me about a week to finally write the letter. Then I posted it and sent it off to London and crossed my fingers. And then a week later, I received an email.
I'm so sorry I've missed being part of your life. I'm from the USA, but I'm currently working in London. If you want, I'll book you and your family flights over here.
Wow.
You can stay with us because what's mine is yours. We can spend the festive season together, as this is truly a Christmas miracle.
That's
I could
exactly
not
what you want to
believe
get
how
when
generous he
you
was
do
with his
this.
response. My family was so excited for me. Mum and Dad were pumped, my cousins were going crazy, and my grandma even had a champagne at 10 a.m. in the morning. But blood related or not, they're my family. I love them and they love me, and nothing's ever going to change that. 30 years after being born, 7 months after posting that video, 5 months after doing the Ancestry DNA test, I'm about to meet my biological father for the very first time.
Now, how much do they look alike?
My birth father has a high-profile job and likes to keep his face off social media, which is fine. We're both very flattered and humbled that people have an interest in our story. This wasn't just about making a video. This was about me meeting someone from my biological family. And at 30 years of age, I've now met someone who has the same blood as me. I've met someone who looks like me. I've met someone with the same DNA as me, and I no longer have to go to the doctor and not be able to answer the medical questions about family history and feel really embarrassed and sheepish about it. After we met for the first time, my mum and Bridget asked, was it emotional? Was it awkward? And the reality was, it was quite underwhelming. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. To anyone else, it would have just seemed like two old mates catching up for a coffee. He told me about his around-the-world backpacking trip in the 80s that led to this, and he told me about my birth mum. He said she was caring, he said she was beautiful, and she even made him a mixtape before he continued on with his travels. We had so many similarities and we had such a great time. Later that night, we caught up for dinner, and we ended up having beers and dinner every night for the whole week I was in London. At first, I was surprised about how welcoming and generous and warm he was, but now that I know him, I'm not really surprised at all. He's a genuinely lovely man, really chilled out, took really good care of us, and has a great sense of humour. He's actually quite quirky. But when he found out about me the first time, he was actually quite annoyed. He was annoyed that no one had told him earlier because he felt like he'd let me down. He was scared I'd be disappointed in him for being that absent father. But he hasn't let me down, and I'm certainly not disappointed in him. He didn't know I existed, and I assumed that would be the case, so how could I be mad? He went on to meet his wife and have a great life himself. And my mum and dad, they couldn't conceive and were told they couldn't be parents. And they've now been my mum and dad for 30 years, and I've lived a great life. It's a good news story for everyone. My adoption story, like a lot of adoption stories, is a good news story. And I'd love it if you shared this video, because I know it's hard. And I know that not every result will be a great result like I've had now. But for me, not knowing, not finding out, not trying, not having closure, that would be harder. Meeting my birth father has been incredible. I never thought it would ever happen, and the only regret I have is that I didn't do it 5, 10, 15 years ago. But believe it or not, that's just the beginning of this story, because my birth father was actually able to introduce me to someone who I never thought I was going to meet either.
His
This
birth
is just
mother?
the beginning of this story, and it's an incredible one, and I'll share the next bit with you shortly.
All right. Well, that was a pretty cool video. I was a little surprised to see Cece Moore had a hand in helping him out. I was not expecting that. Cece is really great genealogist. She's been doing this for years and years and years. I was kind of hoping he maybe talk a little bit more about, had he ever thought about his birth father before or anything? Because the video he showed at first was him talking about his birth mother. So it'd be kind of interesting to see, had he ever thought about him or not? Because like I had said earlier, a lot of people who are adopted will often think more about their birth mother than their birth father. Not to say that they don't think about them at all, but it's often kind of more of a second thought. I'm assuming that his birth father was able to introduce him to his birth mother, or at least give him enough information to find her. More than likely, if he had been talking to Cece Moore and he gave Cece that information, I imagine Cece would have been able to find her, more than likely. So I'll have to go and see what the follow-up video to this is, if he's made it or not. This video was back in March 18th, 2018, so over 2 years old. So hopefully he did that follow-up video, so we'll have to see. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you enjoyed, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. You can also click right about here if you'd like to subscribe, and you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at GeneaVlogger. I'm the GeneaVlogger. I'll see you in my next video.